Hey guys, it's your pal Victor here from Cult Classics and Cult Following. We just finished watching Hawkeye episode 3 and we're going to answer some questions here. Mainly, who is Maya and who is her uncle? If you're curious about who these characters are, stay tuned. We're about to break it down right now. Hey guys, so we just finished watching episode 3 of Hawkeye, and while this show mainly focuses a lot on the character development between Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye and Haley Stansfield's Kate Bishop, and a lot basically on Hawkeye's disability that requires him using that hearing aid, two very interesting elements pop up that we're going to talk about. The first is a character called Maya, who we first met at the end of episode 2, who seems to be the leader of the tracksuit mafia. Now, we're going to tell you who Maya is in case you're curious, so here we go. Maya is actually a character in Marvel Comics who is called Echo, and episode 3 of Hawkeye is actually called Echoes. Most of the beginning of this episode talks about Maya's origin and her relationship with her disability, the fact that she is deaf. She is raised by her father, a character in the comics named Willie Crazy Horse Lincoln, and they've really played up the Native American connection here, having Zan McClarnon, who you might know from Dr. Sleep or Westworld or Fargo, as her father. Willie Crazy Horse Lincoln basically dies very similar to how in the comic books to how you see in this episode. Maya was a young girl when her father was killed. In the comics, her father is killed by the Kingpin, and when Crazy Horse dies, he leaves a bloody handprint on her face. And he has a dying wish that the Kingpin raise Maya as his own daughter. They've tricked it out here so that actually it is Ronan who ends up killing Willie here, who is the leader of the tracksuit mafia at this point. And they've introduced this character, Uncle, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, who's basically like Maya's like sort of paternal figure. So the thing we have to know about Maya here is in the comic books, Maya is actually the original Ronin, and later on, Hawkeye ends up taking that identity. And she uses the identity of Ronin to take down the Kingpin. I don't know that that's necessarily where the MCU is going to go with it, but it does seem like that might be a good redemption arc for the Maya character in order to turn her into a more heroic figure. So now we're going to get into this origin of the uncle, and we see Zan McClarnon saying, do good in class today, and Uncle's going to take you home. And we see a large white man in a black suit come up to Maya and grab her cheek and giggle and laugh and chuckle. And that man's chuckle is clearly the chuckle of Vincent D'Onofrio, which, given the relationship in the comic books, the relationship between Willie and Maya, very clearly telegraphs that this man is the Kingpin. And if you don't know who the Kingpin is, let me just clue you in that the Netflix shows featuring Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and the Defenders and Iron Fist are no longer canon in the MCU. So Marvel is going to reintroduce all of these characters, and this is how they're introducing the Kingpin into the proper MCU. And you might be wondering, but Victor, wasn't the Kingpin the bad guy in Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse? How is it that this Sony character is going to be in the MCU? Well, they already used Kingpin in what was the MCU in Daredevil. Kingpin is one of these unique sort of characters like Quicksilver or the Scarlet Witch, where various studios had an interest in him and could use him because of the character's importance and sort of origins. And He was in a Spider-Man comic first, you know, Sony could use him, but he could also be in Daredevil and Punisher because of his importance in there. And it's one of those legal tests, but there you go. And this opens up a lot of possibilities. We could talk about the fact that is Daredevil, if Daredevil ends up being in Spider-Man No Way Home, does that mean Kingpin is open to be a future Spider-Man villain? Does that mean that there could be a future Daredevil Disney Plus show where Kingpin could be utilized as this overarching villain for a lot of these street-level characters we've already seen on Netflix, because those shows did really well for Netflix. All those things are possible, especially with D'Onofrio coming back as the Kingpin. And I invite you to rewatch the scene and, you know, cue it up against some examples of D'Onofrio laughing on Daredevil and Netflix. I think you'll find pretty spot on. And Marvel is very into these voice cameos of late. Is, if you recall, if you've seen Eternals, you get Mahershala Ali doing a voice cameo as Blade, which I did not catch. Most people did not catch, but there you go. But yeah, that's the big two pulls from this episode. The introduction of Echo, who, you know, she is deaf in the comics, but the prosthetic leg, I don't think is actually a thing here. And she's just a very talented fighter. In fact, my friends, that fight scene she had with Hawkeye where she disables his senses is actually a recapitulation of a fight scene she has with Daredevil where she's able to defeat him by making his senses useless. So there you go. It's taking the comic, remixing it, making it interesting. So there you go. Kingpin introduced, Echo introduced, and hopefully we're going to get to see Yelena or Contessa Valentina show up. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please feel free to subscribe to the channel and, you know, turn on those notifications. We do a lot of these breakdown videos, and thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later. Thanks, guys.